Hello, thank you for visiting my channel again. This is just a quick video to talk about my new Sigma 17 to 50mm 2.8 EX HSM lens. I've already done a little review of a faulty one that I got off a seller, and basically it did appear to me to be a grey import. So I sent it back, but basically he said he didn't know about it. What I actually did is I contacted Sigma, gave him the serial number. You can always find the serial number on the back of the lens there, and also when you get the box there'll be a serial number there as well. So I contacted him, told him about what happened at Sigma. He basically said that's not a UK model, even though obviously I bought it from the UK eBay site. Unfortunately, there's a lot of sites out there that are selling lenses. Apparently they've got them in stock and they're in the UK, but sometimes you find out later, further down the line, that it's coming from Hong Kong and you've got import duty to pay. They might not stipulate that when they do the listing. However, when Royal Mail come along and they'll leave a letter or something and say you've got to pay this because it's come from outside the UK, even though their listing might state no import duty to pay, you'll still end up paying it, believe me. So this is obviously the real deal. This lens is from Jessops, good retailer, a camera shop in the UK, and you're supposed to get £50 rebate, but I've not seen that rebate yet. Anyway, it's a good lens. It's 2.8, gives you good quality. I've not experienced any problems with it. The only downside to it is it doesn't have a manual override on it. All you've got on here is obviously optical stabilization on and off, autofocus and manual. You do have a lock, but to be honest, I don't know why they even bother. A 17mm to 50mm lens, you're not going to have any lens creep at all. You know, it's just not even worth thinking about. But there is a lock button there if you want to use it, and it's a good lens. You've got a nice lens cap on there. I've not experienced any issues with focusing, and it's ideal at 2.8 going to f22, so there ain't a problem with it. It's a good lens, so anyone who's after a cheap lens out there, you're probably talking around the £300 mark for this lens. You probably get it maybe a bit cheaper if you shop around, but yeah, that's approximately what you'll pay for it. So, you know, if you want to see the grey import, check my other video out. But it's a good lens to have, and I hope this video has been helpful. I, to be honest, would be more than happy to go on a wedding shoot and take this lens with me. It is really sharp. I've not experienced any problems. The only thing you need to keep in mind is this 17 to 50mm EX HSS lens is an APS-C sensor lens, not full frame. So you won't be able to use this on full frame, unfortunately. But I happen to have quite a few different smaller lenses, as well as the you know, the stock lens that comes with it. I don't see any need for me to get an L lens as such. So that's the Sigma 17 to 50mm 2.8 APS-C lens, and it's ideal. In terms of the crop factor, you're probably getting approximately 25mm at the wide end to around 70mm. So it's not too bad. It's probably just as good as the Canon 24 to, I think it's 55 or 70. You know, but basically it's a decent lens. and for the price, not bad. Not had any problems with it. But you can buy it brand new for approximately £300 British. I hope this little video has been a little bit helpful. In terms of sharpness, it's extremely sharp for my personal eyesight. I've not experienced any major problems. Focusing is dead on. If you look at the other video, you could tell that the focusing was a bit off. And obviously I think maybe it'd be a good idea if I show you guys how it works in terms of focusing. So let's set the lens to 2.8. I'm just going to focus on this Apple keyboard I've got here. And the computer screen. I'll just take a shot so you can have a look. If you was to see my other video, at this moment in time you would see it going in and out as I was talking. You could hear me say that, in out all the time. But there's no hunting at all. So clearly that grain pot was a knackered lens. Let's change the aperture a little bit. In aperture priority to f8. Obviously the lighting here ain't great. Obviously there might be a bit of camera shake with it being such a long shutter speed. What shutter speed we're running at? We're running at 1 second shutter speeds. But even with the OS, it's pretty good. So I would completely recommend this lens. I was in two minds whether to get the Canon 17-55, which was retailing up between £500 and £700. To be honest, this lens is really good. Obviously it's not quite as long, with it only going to 55 on the actual lens itself, but it's still a good lens. The actual filter thread is 77mm, so obviously any sort of filters are going to be quite expensive. I would recommend a polarizer filter for this sort of thing. The Tiffin ones are pretty good quality. In terms of the downsides to this lens, the only downside I can see to it is it doesn't have full manual override. Now if you're wondering what that is, what it is when you're in autofocus, if you try to touch the actual autofocus ring and try to actually manually focus, you'll damage the motor. So you've got to remember, whenever you're actually focusing, is going to manual, click the switch to manual, and then obviously take your photo, and then you can do manual focus with no issues. That's the only downside to this lens. I don't see it being a major issue. It's not a big lens, it's not that heavy, and it is a fantastic lens for what it can do. 2.8 lenses are not cheap, and to be honest, it seems hard wearing, no major issues. Obviously it's not going to be weather sealed like the Canon lenses, but for £300 what can you expect? So this is the Sigma DC 17-50mm 2.8 EX HSM lens. If you want to see my other review of the faulty lens, have a look. You'll see me using it and having a look at it in more detail. But for the best part of this lens is it's a 2.8 aperture all the way through, from 17-50mm. Now that's APS-C. It does get a bit confusing when they say that on the lens, because this is an APS-C lens only, not a full frame. So why they would put 17 to 50mm when it's realistically more like a 25 to 70mm lens, it doesn't make a lot of sense why they put that on the actual lens. Anyway, this is the EX HSM Sigma lens, 17 to 50mm, 2.8 all the way through. Good lens for anyone who's doing this sort of photography. It's good for landscapes, and it's also quite good for anyone who might be thinking about doing weddings. Might be a cheaper alternative to the Canon lenses. And other people who are on YouTube have also said the same, so it's not just me saying that. So I hope this little video has been educational about this lens. It's very good quality, but be mindful of buying cheaper ones on eBay, because what you don't want is what they call a grey import, because the problem with grey imports is your local Sigma dealers won't want anything to do with it because it wasn't a UK version, and your warranty is basically worthless unless you're prepared to send it back to Hong Kong or wherever it came from and get them to repair it. But then it might go missing, or they might even refuse to do it because you're sending it from a different country. So my advice is buy in the UK. Hope I haven't rambled too long on this video, and thank you for watching.